We are now moving on to topic 8. So this is 8-1. We're going to be learning about integers and the number line. Here is the launch problem to start.
To prepare for an overnight camping trip, you begin checking the temperature to see what clothes to bring. If the trend continues, what might the temperature be at 8 p.m.? Describe or show a possible temperature.
Remember that this is just a launch problem. It's to get your brains thinking, so if you don't know an answer, just try your absolute hardest, and then I will show you the answer soon. Here is a possible solution for the launch problem. You can pause the video so that you can read it. Moving on to the key concept, there's different types of numbers we're going to learn about, and the first one is positive numbers.
Numbers to the right of 0 are positive numbers. Numbers without a sign symbol are assumed to be positive.
You guys know this one. Positive numbers. It's not that hard. Those are the numbers that you first learned how to count when you were just a little child. Next up is negative numbers.
Numbers to the left of 0 are negative numbers. Negative numbers are written with a negative sign before the number.
So, all of these right here, negative. There's -1, -2, -3. Those are negative numbers. Next up we have 0. It's neither positive nor negative. It just sits right there in the middle. So positive numbers, negative numbers, and 0. Opposites.
Two numbers that are the same distance from 0 on a number line but in opposite directions are called opposites. The opposite of 0 is 0. For example, -4 and 4 are opposites.
This is like looking in a mirror. Your mirrored image is going to be going in the opposite direction. So if you go to the right 3 steps, the opposite of going to the right 3 steps is going to the left 3 steps. Last but not least, we have integers.
The integers are the set of positive whole numbers, their opposites, and 0.
So where all of these green dots are, those are all integers. They're like our counting numbers. When we move on to part 1, this example, it wants us to name the integers that these dots are at and then find the opposite. So A is listed at -6. That is an integer. The opposite of -6, I'll take this red dot and place it at 6. So it's as simple as that. -6 and 6 are opposites of each other. I want you to tell me what the opposite of B is and what the opposite of C is. If you said that the opposite of B was 0, you're absolutely correct. 0 is the opposite of itself. If you said that the opposite of C is -2, that would have made you correct. So first got it problem in this lesson. What is the opposite of 9? The correct answer is -9. It really is that simple. This second got it problem is just a little bit harder, but not much at all. It says, what is the opposite of 4, and how do you know? So the opposite of 4 is 4. You just break it up. The opposite of 4 is -4, and then the opposite of that goes back to 4. So the opposite of 4 stays the same. The opposite of a number is always the number itself. You guys are actually going to answer these questions in our part 2 example, but I'm just going to give you some words of advice before you begin. Below 0. Here's 0, you want the numbers below it. A loss of $6. You're losing money. Typically that goes with negative numbers. A gain of 8 yards. If you're gaining something, that's usually a positive thing. And if you take 3 steps backwards, if you take 3 steps backwards, you're going in a negative direction. I basically just told you how to get the answers, so hopefully you listen to the video and you're not just letting it play and trying to answer questions aimlessly. But I want you to solve this example problem, and I'll show you the answers in a second. All right, 5 degrees below 0, that's -5. A gain of 8 yards, that's a +8. A loss of $6, lose it, that's a negative consequence. And 3 steps back, that's also a negative, so -3. Check our answers. Awesome. Here's our part 2 got it problem.
Electrons and protons are particles with equal but opposite charges. Electrons have a negative charge and protons have a positive charge. What is the charge of an atom with 2 more electrons than protons?
The correct answer is -2. Electrons and protons cancel each other out. So if you have 2 more electrons, which it says electrons have a negative charge, if you have 2 more electrons than protons, it's 2 more negative charges than positive charges. So that's why the answer is -2. By explaining that last got it problem, I kind of gave you the answer to this got it problem.
What does it mean if an atom has a charge of 0?
The atom contains the same number of electrons as protons. They cancel each other out. For this example problem,
the highest point on land on Earth is the peak of Mount Everest. Its elevation is 29,028 feet above sea level. The lowest point on land on Earth is in the Dead Sea. Its elevation is 1,312 feet below sea level. Express each elevation as an integer.
we're now looking at integers with real-life examples. So we want to express these elevations as an integer, which means we want to express it as either a positive number or a negative number. So the highest point is Mount Everest, which would be up here, and that's 29,028 feet above sea level. If it's above sea level, that's going to express as a positive number. So I would simply write 29,028. If I'm expressing an elevation, the lowest point, which is the Dead Sea, and it's below sea level, that means 0, which is at sea level, I'm going underneath that. So this would be a negative integer, so negative 1,312. That is all you have to do. Know that sea level, at sea level is 0, so if it's above sea level, your positive numbers, below sea level, your negative numbers. And here's the last got it problem with this lesson.
The lowest point in the United States is in Death Valley. Its elevation is 282 feet below sea level. Express this elevation as an integer.
Negative 282 feet because it is below sea level. So below sea level, we want to use negative integers to express that. So negative 282 feet. That's all I got for 8-1. It's a fairly simple lesson. So please make sure that this video is completed before moving on to the 8-1 homework assignment, which we will do in class.